Okay, I'm going to begin this with something that's kind of funny, which I share with my classes that I wrote a while back. This is how people argue on the internet. The sky is blue. How dare you? Prove it! Look at the sky. What color do you see? White. Those are clouds. Gotcha! No, you don't got me. You're looking at the wrong thing. Let's try this. What color is that shirt you're wearing? Blue. Look at the sky, the open part next to the clouds. Is not that the same color as your shirt? Are you saying the sky comes from Walmart just like my shirt? You're an idiot. No. If you don't think that's how people argue on the internet, you haven't blogged as I did for many years and had a lot of readers. And I got into fights like that all the time. Well, I mean, just on Facebook. Some of you have probably gotten into those kinds of discussions on Facebook. What that tells you is what is supposed to be the point of an argument, which is two people trying to come to the truth. What I just gave you an example of is called eristic argumentation. Eris, the goddess of strife. It's when one of at least two people or both parties argue not to discover the truth, but to win. You know, I'm teaching The Lord of the Rings on Homeschool Connections, and to kind of illustrate how tempting it is to use the ring, even though it's evil and it makes you evil the more you use it, I talk about the Super Bowl. I could say, well, you could play in the Super Bowl and your teammate could say, hey, this is the most important game of the year and I know how we're going to win. Oh yeah, how? We're going to cheat. If all you're thinking about is winning or losing, or if all you're thinking about is this world only, then this makes no sense to you. And this seems to be only defeat. Because if all you care about is winning, well, you'd have to be a fool to embrace the cross. But this is what people do. They only want to win, and they only want to win in their backyards, and they only want to focus on this world, and they don't want to think about the grander, the more grand meaning of life, and the whole purpose as to why we're here, how, as Father Schall says, we have come out of nothing. What is the point as to why we are now, for whatever reason, something? What is the purpose of our lives? That's not an issue if you won't even look at the color of the sky. Assuming you're not colorblind and you don't want to admit the sky is blue, you've got an agenda. And God then says, if you want to be blind, be blind. Now, that's part of what we're going to talk about in Scripture today. So I'm going to go to the Magic Kindle and the translation that I've decided I don't like, the New International Version. There are some men who don't like Saul. And Saul, it turns out, goes back to being a kind of a farmer. He's king. He's not comfortable being king until the people of Jabesh Gilead are besieged. And the only terms that Nahash the Ammonite will agree to is that he can gouge out each of their right eyes. And so in desperation, they ask for help from their fellow Jews. Saul, it says, just then Saul was returning from the fields, verse 5, behind his oxen, and he asked, what is wrong with everyone? Why are they weeping? Then they repeated to him what the men of Jabesh had said. When Saul heard their words, the Spirit of God came powerfully upon him, and he burned with anger. There is such a thing as righteous anger. Wrath can be one of the 7 deadly sins. On the other hand, not being angry when you should, like when infanticide becomes a thing in the USA, is not righteousness at all. Sometimes we just keep thinking that holiness means you sit there and smile. That's not what holiness is. In this case, Saul does the right thing. He took a pair of oxen. The oxen, it's sort of like Peter and the apostles being fishermen. They leave their nets and they follow Jesus. This is sort of where Saul leaves his nets. His nets happen to be the oxen. Later, when we meet David, David is a shepherd. Saul is working in the fields and he's using oxen. He's more of a farmer. But Saul sacrifices that when his people need him. He took a pair of oxen, cut them into pieces, and sent the pieces by messengers throughout Israel, proclaiming, "This is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who does not follow Saul and Samuel. First of all, I'm going to do this to your own oxen if you don't follow me." And then he musters a force. He rescues his fellow Jews. And then finally they recognize him publicly as the king. And this is sort of what cements his regal nature and his authority. But the men who we read about earlier who didn't like him, once Saul is victorious in battle, everybody says, "Let's kill those guys." And Saul says, "No, no one will be put to death today, for this day the Lord has rescued Israel." That's my Saul voice, by the way. Now, I just wanted to show me bookmarks. Now let's take a look at the gospel. We know that Jesus is preparing for his hour. He's entered Jerusalem. And yesterday we talked about believe in the light while you have the light so that you may become children of the light. And then we are told by the narrator, even after Jesus had performed so many signs in their presence, they still would not believe in him. This was to fulfill the word of Isaiah the prophet. "Lord, who has believed on our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed?" For this reason, they could not believe, because as Isaiah says elsewhere, he has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts so that they can neither see with their eyes nor understand with their hearts, nor turn, and I would heal them. That sounds like a harsh saying. And people sometimes in the story of Pharaoh and Moses, we are told over and over again that God hardens the heart of Pharaoh. That's an effect, not a cause. If you want to be stubborn, if you want to blind yourself to the truth, if you want to simply win an argument and not look at the truth before you, because all you can do when arguing with someone else is simply, as Orestes Brownson said, you take everything away and you show them the truth unvarnished, and there's that aha moment, because that's how the mind works. There comes a point where no more proof is necessary because you see it and recognize it. That's cognition. And if you're stubborn and you refuse to see what's true when it's right before you, then it's pointless that anyone argues with you. Then you have eyes and you cannot see, you have ears and you cannot hear. And Jesus speaks in parables so that they do not understand. It is a sign of their own intransigence. Now, Saul spares the people who are opposed to him, and he does not take vengeance on them. But Saul's victory serves as a sign of their intransigence. And they may have had some reason to say, "Is this the guy that's going to save us?" So that's really not exactly what's happening in that reading from 1 Samuel. But it is certainly what's happening in the gospel. Right before the Passion begins, and we have the farewell discourses in the Gospel according to St. John, we're reminded again that regardless of the healing and the preaching and the miracles, regardless of Lazarus coming out of the tomb, there are some people who will not believe. And that is significant. It is a sign. The resistance to Jesus, which is a resistance found in each of our hearts, is a sign. It's a mystery, the mystery of iniquity. And then God, as he does with Pharaoh, he simply says, if this is how you're going to be that way. The way he says to the Jews, if you want a king, you can have a king. Pharaoh, if you want to be like this, guess what's going to happen? Your heart is going to harden. People who don't want to see the evidence in front of them. When John the Baptist sends emissaries to Jesus to ask him, are you the one or should we wait for another? He says, tell him what you see. The lame walk, the blind receive their sight, the deaf receive their hearing. The poor are having the gospel preached to them. The sky is blue. You want to call it another color, that's up to you. But if you're not colorblind and you can see it, admit it. And if you don't, your heart can be as hard as you want it to be, but that will be the end result. Hell will be the end result. And we do it to ourselves. All right. That's that. More tomorrow, God willing.